A little while ago, I uploaded a video about what happens when you use a CPU without its cooler, and it got me wondering, what happens when you do the same thing to a graphics card? So obviously I did not want to use any fancy or newer GPU for this video because I suspect that we're going to kill the graphics card. So what I am using is an ATI Radeon HD 3650, which has 256 megabytes of GDDR3 and is basically completely worthless at this point, and so I don't mind destroying it for this video. So first I'm going to look at some idle temperatures, and then I'm going to run a quick test to get the baseline temperatures for what this GPU can handle. So far we are currently sitting at 59 degrees Celsius. It's kind of slowly climbing. The average is 56.4. That's slowly going up as the GPU is slowly rising in temperature, and we're just idling here on the desktop. So I'm going to run a quick benchmark and see how the GPU temps fare. So after a quick Unigine Heaven benchmark, we could see the GPU maxed out at 82 degrees Celsius, which is incredibly hot, but I guess that's pretty normal for GPUs this old to be getting that hot because the coolers on them, they're pretty tiny. So the first thing, I'm going to kind of run this the same way that I did the CPU benchmark. The first thing I'm going to do is unplug the fan and see what happens to the idle temps. So interestingly enough, the GPU is heating up very slowly. The fan is unplugged, and it's sitting right around 81, 82 degrees Celsius, which is about the temperature that we were getting in the benchmark. So, yeah, it's interesting to see at idle, the GPU, while hot, it's running at the temps it should be running under load. It is keeping itself kind of in a way under control. So I'm going to run a benchmark and see what happens when the GPU is unplugged under load. So it is quite laggy, and the GPU has hit 90 degrees Celsius, which is quite hot. I'm guessing this thing should shut down soon, but this old of a GPU, I don't know how many fail-safes they have in these things, so it might just melt itself to death, honestly. Oh, there it is. We are getting to 100 degrees Celsius. That is insane, and this thing hasn't even shut down yet. It is still running the benchmark, no problem, at 100 degrees Celsius. And what impresses me is that it's not even like thermal throttling or anything. Like, it's still pushing that 725 megahertz on the GPU and 500 megahertz on the memory. That is crazy. So I'm going to shut this down before the GPU kills itself, because I still want to find out what happens when you take the cooler completely off the GPU. It is honestly crazy how hot this thing is to the touch. Like, you can't hold your finger on any of, like, the metal components on this graphics card. Like, it's insanely hot. And I don't know if you've smelled hot electronics before, but this thing smells like hot electronics, and it doesn't smell very good. So the first thing we're going to see is, will the computer even boot with the GPU not having any form of cooler on it whatsoever? So press the power button here and see what happens. So, interesting turn of events here. The computer's actually booting. As you can see, GPU has no cooler. Oh, it just went black. This thing has to be, like, insanely hot. Ow, yep, that's hot. Surprised it hasn't started on fire yet. I did have a bottle of water on hand just in case it does ignite itself, but seems to have gone completely black. I'm going to put the cooler back on and see if we can get a picture again. So I've completely reinstalled the cooler, fan and everything, booted it up. As you can see, we have a picture coming out of the graphics card even after we overheated it, tried to boot the computer without a cooler on it, and it still works, which is insane and just shows how GPUs, even back in the day, had fail-safes. As you can see, it shut itself off when we didn't have a cooler on it before it got to the point where it killed itself, and here we are still having a completely usable graphics card. That is crazy. I am honestly extremely impressed with this little graphics card and how it didn't melt itself to death while we were absolutely torturing it with overheating tests. And yeah, it's just interesting to see how manufacturers have implemented fail-safes into their cards to prevent overheating and preventing the cards to die if they get too hot. And this thing definitely shut down when we were booting it up without a cooler, which is one of those fail-safes. I was definitely pretty terrified that this thing would start on fire, but it didn't, so we're good there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this test. I probably wouldn't recommend running your GPU without a cooler on it, but I just wanted to see what would happen. So I hope this was interesting to you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.